Hello, I'm Haley Perot, and this is Northwest NEWSWEEK. Premier Doug Ford came to Greenstone on Tuesday to renew partnerships with 4 area First Nations. But not all of the chiefs are pleased with the province's priorities, though, when it comes to helping with their other issues. Justin Hardy was there for the announcement and has this report.
Doug Ford met with leadership from Long Lake 58, Arrowland First Nation, Animbigo-Zagin, Anishinaabe, and Ganugaming First Nation to sign letters of confirmation to support renewed partnerships with the 4 communities. He also announced $1.9 million for the Indigenous Workforce Development Program and $2 million to fund the construction and maintenance of the McGeezy Plaza rest stop on Highway 11, just outside Geraldton.
Without your collaboration and cooperation, this would not be happening right now. This is your legacy that you can drive by and tell your children, your grandchildren. If it wasn't for your leadership and everyone's cooperation, this wouldn't be happening right now. And it's such an honor to be here with you today, especially during National Indigenous History Month.
These opportunities that we have before us is going to create employment for our communities. They're going to enhance our communities, in every which way. We're all here for the same reason: prosperity, to make our communities grow.
Ford also announced plans to build and improve highway infrastructure and to develop a pre-charge diversion program with relevant First Nations and police services, as well as plans to relocate the Greenstone OPP detachment funded by Greenstone Gold Mine. Not every community leader in attendance was celebrating. Ganugaming First Nation says that its chief participated Tuesday in duress. The community has been in a continuous state of emergency for the past 30 days. Chief Sherry Taylor says her community's suffering hasn't been addressed by the provincial and federal governments.
Our community is not starting at the same place in the starting line when it comes to Ontario's focus on investments in Greenstone. It is not missed on me that projects that benefit the government of Ontario are taking precedence over the resolution of our state of emergency, and that 7 decades of grievances that we've experienced have not been resolved.
The Premier was not made available for any questions from the media following the announcement. Minister of Indigenous Affairs and First Nations Economic Reconciliation Greg Rickford says he and his office will be following up with Ganugaming leadership about issues it's facing immediately. He also called on Federal Minister of Indigenous Services Patty Hajdu to assist.
And I hope that the federal minister will pay attention to what's gone on here today with the full support of the First Nations communities, and commit now here today that when I call, she'll pick up the phone, she'll say, "Hello, Greg, let's address these residual matters that Chief Taylor mentioned."
I think we've been at the table. I mean, listen, I last week announced $1.2 billion to help the province of Ontario deliver healthcare for the Winnebago area in Northern Ontario. That's a huge commitment to supporting the province of Ontario in terms of the areas in which it has jurisdiction, primarily healthcare. But I think there's always an opportunity to improve the lives of people in Northern Ontario if we work together.
Some of Ganugaming First Nations grievances include industry and land sale activities, including water diversion being carried out on traditional territories without compensation or economic inclusion, and failure to implement a mining withdrawal to protect or preserve ongoing treaty land entitlement candidate lands. Justin Hardy, TBT News.
First Nation were in Dryden on Thursday, calling for the pulp mill to be shut down. They say there has been no response from the mill since research was released nearly a month ago, showing that runoff from the mill is still worsening the mercury contamination in the English Wabigoon River system. The protesters want a shutdown of the mill until the company's practices are changed and the effluent dumped into the water no longer presents a danger to the health of the people downstream. Grassy Narrows Chief Rudy Turtle also wants penalties imposed on the mill for continuing to contaminate the river. He doesn't hold the mill solely responsible. He says the provincial and federal governments also have a role to play in regulating industry and ensuring safe practices. Turtle says action is needed urgently as people in his community continue to get sick.
I understand that people have jobs at the mill, but also they need to understand we're being poisoned, so there has to be some kind of a balance struck between the two. That's why I'm saying that the practices of the mill need to be reviewed, and so we're no longer being poisoned.
The lead scientist behind the recent report says mercury contamination is getting worse every day the mill continues to dump sulfates and other organic matter into the river. 2 investigators from the Transportation Safety Board were in the town of Red Lake this week looking into the cause of a float plane crash that injured 5 people last Sunday. OPP say it happened just before 7 o'clock Sunday morning on Red Lake. Emergency crews rushed to the crash site off Pickerel Drive, and they found 2 people with serious injuries, while 3 others sustained minor injuries. All 5 occupants were transported to hospital. The wife of one of the passengers posted on social media saying her husband suffered a broken leg and a collapsed lung due to broken ribs and was sent to the hospital in Thunder Bay. The Beaver aircraft is owned by Canadian Fly-In Fishing Limited, based in Red Lake. The TSB investigates incidents such as this one to look for safety or training deficiencies or evidence of human error. A new social media page was launched this month to show the effects of a shortage of paramedics in the eastern part of the Thunder Bay district. One post claims people along the North Shore can expect rotating ambulance base closures this summer. The head of Superior North EMS says that's not accurate, but he admits that they're having trouble filling vacant positions. Justin Hardy has more.
Ongoing staffing shortages being faced by Superior North EMS have become critical this year compared to the last few years, according to Carrie Jefford, president of Unifor Local 229. The union, which represents paramedics along the North Shore, recently launched a social media page to announce when staffing issues affect services in smaller towns in the district. Jefford says the page was meant as a way to raise awareness of the need for paramedics in the region.
We have been trying desperately over the last few years to increase staffing levels for paramedics in the district of Thunder Bay. We usually have about over 100 paramedics. Currently, right now, there's 24 job vacancies that are wide open, and people just aren't applying.
One post on Unifor's Facebook page claims EMS base stations will be experiencing rotating closures this summer due to inadequate staffing levels. EMS Chief Shane Muir is taking issue with that claim.
No, so there is no planned downstaffing. There is no rotating closures. We endeavor to staff every shift in every station, and we do try and prioritize those high call volume stations.
But Muir concedes the district is a vast area with 13 stations, and it won't be easy keeping all of them staffed.
That's a lot of shifts to cover. So it's a bit of a challenge to make sure that they're all filled. We have a problem with staff leaving with absenteeism. So it does compound some issues because we do have to provide that vacation time. Otherwise, our paramedics get burnt out. We run up into a very long-term dire situation.
Muir says that roughly 15 people could be hired for part-time positions. Jefford says that the real issue is the lack of proper incentives to want to work in the north.
We think some of the working conditions in the north and in the district stations is a bit of a challenge. Mostly, the wages and benefits packages need to reflect why people want to move up here into the district.
Staffing shortages are an ongoing issue across the province, which could potentially only get worse as Superior North EMS prepares for a possible gap year in graduates coming out of college in 2028. Justin Hardy, TBT News.
Northwest Region OPP have laid charges against a transport driver after the rig crashed and caught fire on Highway 17 last weekend. It happened near Borup's Corners between Ignace and Dryden. OPP say the transport veered off the highway and struck a rock cut, causing the vehicle to burst into flames. The driver and co-driver were both transported to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The highway completely closed for about an hour and a half before reopening to a single lane of alternating traffic. And the driver, a 32-year-old man, was from Winnipeg and was later charged with careless driving. A bear attack in the remote area near Armstrong sent one person to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. It happened on June 12th in Wabakimi Provincial Park. Emergency services got the call that morning around 8:30, and the victim was transported to hospital by EMS. The bear was nowhere to be found. People are advised to exercise extreme caution when they encounter bears or other wildlife. This year's dry and mild winter had many people concerned about a busy forest fire season in the Northwest. But officials with the Ministry of Natural Resources say the 2024 fire season has seen a much slower start than anticipated. Fire Information Officer Chris Marchand says the lack of fires this spring simply comes down to the regular rainfall with few hot and sunny days in between. According to MNR stats, the early season numbers have fluctuated greatly over the past 4 years. In 2021, there were 238 fires, over 22,000 hectares burned at this point, but the number plummeted in 2022 and then spiked again last year. As of June 10th this year, there had been 37 small fires and only 52 hectares burned. However, Marchand says that the situation can change on a day-to-day basis.
Should the weather begin to trend towards hot, sunny, windy weather, that can all turn around and create an escalated fire situation. That's why it's important to always be aware of the wildland fire hazard in your area if campfires or outdoor burning activities are in your plans. As well, lightning is just starting to become a factor for us in the region, and we expect to see more of that happening on the landscape as a source of ignition in the days to come.
A research team has confirmed a tornado touched down east of Ear Falls during a storm system on June 4th, with an estimated maximum wind speed of 190 kilometers per hour. The Northern Tornadoes Project, based at Western University, is investigating the storm system near Landings Lake by analyzing high-resolution satellite images. Based on the extent of tree damage over a 5-kilometer-long track, the tornado is classified in the middle of the severity range for tornadoes. Project Executive Director David Sills says there may have been more twisters in the region at that time, but they'll have to wait for clear satellite imagery to know for sure.
It has to be cloud-free and free of any smoke or anything like that. So sometimes it takes a little while for clear imagery to come up, and then we can compare that new imagery to older imagery before the tornado occurred or before the event. For other parts of northwestern Ontario, we're still waiting for clear imagery. So we may find more tornadoes from that day, but at this point, it's looking unlikely.
It's time now for a short break. When we come back, we'll head to one of the biggest celebrations of National Indigenous Peoples Day. A special event was held at Thunder Bay's Marina Park on Friday in honor of National Indigenous Peoples Day. Hundreds of people from around the region made their way there for an opportunity to learn more about Indigenous culture. Nev Van Pelt was there and has the details.
June 21st is National Indigenous Peoples Day and dates back to 1996. It's an important day to recognize and celebrate the unique heritage, diverse cultures, and contributions of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Fort William First Nation Chief Michelle Solomon shared the importance of holding this event on the waterfront.
Learn about culture and learn about the first peoples of this land. And so, young people are learning this at an early age. So it really, if you look to the future, it's going to change the way this looks in 20 years from now, because young people from all walks of life will know, they'll have that more of that understanding and awareness of Indigenous people and what has happened throughout history.
In 2011, Thunder Bay City Council met with Fort William First Nation and created a joint declaration of commitment, with both councils pledging to meet twice a year. Acting Mayor Casey Trainee says this was put on hold just before COVID, and she wants to bring it back.
Education, ways we can do better, the ways we can work together, the collaboration. And today I asked the leaders, including me myself, being one of the leaders, to relook at this declaration of commitment and start to look at how we can reinstate that.
The day was filled with drumming and dancing, which the community had the opportunity to join in on. Dancer Maria Kimball was here right from the start of the festivities.
I was up early with the sunrise ceremony, and so we started the day with that, and I was in my ribbon skirt and giving tobacco to the fire and listening to the elders speak was really powerful. And just getting ready for the powwow was just easy to put on my jingle dress and start dancing away, and I've been dancing since I was just a little girl.
Kimball adds she was thrilled to see the support from the community.
Oh, it's so important. It's just so lovely to be here and seeing all the faces, and it means the world to me that everyone came out for this day, and just to see a turnout like this, it's really great.
Nev Van Pelt, TBT News.
The Northwestern Ontario Municipal Association has unveiled a new regional economic plan with a focus on growing the Northwest over the next decade. It highlights the importance of the 37 municipalities working collaboratively to identify and tackle the needs in the region. NOMA has sent out 15 goals for the Northwest to achieve over the next 10 years, including increasing access to skilled labor, improving the quality of life, and improving access to affordable housing. NOMA President and Shunya Mayor Wendy Landry says the plan is a roadmap that demonstrates to all levels of government how unique the region and its needs are. She adds that by sharing the plan, area residents can see where the communities are at and where they need to go.
I think that the important part is that this is a live document, so it will change over time. It won't look the same, but it'll be a guide and it'll be a commitment for what we're going to do for the Northwest when, some of us are not at the table anymore and there's other people there. They will see the hard work that was put into this. And it's good for municipalities, governments, agencies, like I said, to take a look at it to see where they can play a part, where our strengths are, where we can really grow in certain areas of our municipality.
The action plan can be found on NOMA's website. A pair of large drug busts were carried out by police in 2 area First Nations on Wednesday. Anishinaabe police executed 2 search warrants in Sandy Lake First Nation. They seized around $20,000 worth of cocaine and hydromorphone pills, cash, and an imitation firearm. 2 women from Sandy Lake, aged 46 and 33, were taken into custody and charged with drug trafficking offenses. Meanwhile, in Couchiching First Nation, Treaty 3 police and OPP seized large amounts of cocaine, crack cocaine, meth, and cash following a month-long investigation. A 45-year-old Couchiching man and a 35-year-old Fort Frances woman are facing drug trafficking charges. Kiiwetinoong MPP Saul Mamakwa is hoping to see real change, including an apology for the sexual abuse survivors of Ralph Rowe. Mamakwa was recently in Toronto sitting in a meeting between the survivors group and the Anglican Church of Canada.
I think, that meeting between the Church of Canada, Anglican Church of Canada, and also the survivors is a path towards, where there will be some type of apology at some point. I don't know when.
Rowe is the former Anglican minister and Boy Scout leader who was convicted of sexually abusing dozens of First Nations boys in the North starting in the 1970s. He spent only 5 years in jail for his crimes after agreeing to a plea deal. The meeting was a way for survivors to address church leadership and let them know how much damage had been done. Despite their pain and hardships following the abuse, Mamakwa says they showed a lot of compassion to those who they were addressing.
It was very heavy for sure, very emotional, very heartfelt, anger. There's so many emotions. But out of that as well, they're so kind. They're so kind, considering what they went through.
Mamakwa is calling for public apologies from the Anglican Church and Scouts Canada, along with funding for healing initiatives for the survivors of Rose abuse. There was a bit of a disturbance in Schreiber on Tuesday. Some people in the community were forced to evacuate their homes that morning after an old military explosive was found. The OPP Explosives Disposal Unit was on site to recover and dispose of the device, and affected residents were allowed to return home on Tuesday afternoon. But it's now time for another short break, but stick around. And we've got a story coming up about an area woman who's been immortalized on a postage stamp.
Mammen was born on Manitoulin Island, but lived most of her life in
Canada Post is honoring the late Josephine Mammen by putting the local water rights activist on a postage stamp. She was a Anishinaabe elder who co-founded the Mother Earth Water Walk movement. Her stamp was unveiled this week at the Marina Park Spirit Garden in Thunder Bay. Jessica Clement reports.
Josephine Mammen, fondly remembered as Grandmother Water Walker, dedicated her life to protecting the waters and advocating for Indigenous rights and water conservation. The residential school survivor walked more than 25,000 kilometers, including around all 5 Great Lakes, to raise awareness of the need to preserve water. She passed away in 2019, and to honor her legacy, Canada Post created a commemorative stamp and unveiled it at the city waterfront. Mammen was born on Manitoulin Island, but lived most of her life in Thunder Bay, which made the Spirit Garden the perfect setting for the ceremony. The celebration brought out a number of Mammen's friends and family, including her daughter, Regina. She described her mother as a very kind, hardworking, and generous person who really cared about the environment and the water.
I think it really is an important time for Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people to learn about how we can work together to preserve the water and take care of Mother Earth. So it's really nice to see her message to be communicated through this way to everyday people. I think it's really a fulfilling moment for sure.
Mammen also worked with the Ontario Native Women's Association in various capacities throughout the years. CEO Cora McGuire-Surrett says it's really good for the community to be able to celebrate female Indigenous leaders.
Particularly, a woman like Josephine, who's left such a huge legacy in our community, and being able to really showcase, especially when you're looking now in Canada, how we're facing crisis, water crises all around. Now is the time for us to take up that responsibility, for us to really look at how we're contributing to this water crisis. We need to start to protect the environment, and the time is now.
The stamp is part of Canada Post's third Indigenous Leader Stamp series. John Hamilton, Vice President of Strategic Communications for Canada Post, says the Assembly of First Nations recommended they honor Mammen with a stamp.
For Grandmother Josephine, her story of reminding us all of the power and the vitality of water, and the kilometers that she walked and everything, and dedicating her life to that, is just a story that so many people should know, and we're happy to be a small part of telling that story.
The stamp, along with 2 others, will be issued on June 21st, National Indigenous Peoples Day. Jessica Clement, TBT News.
It's a huge achievement for 22-year-old Abby Dent from Kenora. She's been named to Canada's Olympic rowing team as part of the women's 8 in Paris. Dent was on the women's 8 squad that won gold in Chile last year at the Pan American Games and won gold in Switzerland last month at the Olympic qualifier. She also took home silver in another event at the Pan Am Games. Paris 2024 will mark the Olympic debut for Dent, who competed with the Kenora Rowing Club and the Manitoba Rowing Club. The 2024 Summer Olympics begin on July 26th, and the rowing competition will take place from July 27th to August 3rd. And we'll all be cheering Abby on, as well as the rest of Canada, and best of luck to Abby. And that's all for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. We'll be back next week with more of the top stories from across the Northwest.